Hey everyone, so I got a fantastic question on Facebook, so thank you for the person who asked it, which is what keeps Bitcoin adoption from just fizzling out and then sort of fading back into the obscurity from whence it came? So a couple thoughts on this, or quite a few thoughts on this. This is one of the better questions that's been asked in a very long time. So the person who asked it, tell the source. It's a very good question. It's a fantastic question. Okay, so a bunch of thoughts on this. One, the reason I promote Bitcoin is not because of number go up. It's not because the price is rising or that more people are just buying it for no reason. I support Bitcoin because of its incredible underlying technical abilities and the real world problems that it solves, which is the ability to move value the same way we move information. So the internet allows us to exchange information anywhere in the world, which has proven to be incredibly valuable. And Bitcoin allows us to exchange value anywhere in the world with anyone, anywhere in the world instantaneously. So that is a very, very, very valuable thing to do, to be able to exchange and transmit value anywhere in the world, to be able to store value over time, which right now is volatile if it's in Bitcoin, but long term will not be. So the underlying benefits of the monetary properties of Bitcoin, its scarcity, divisibility, fungibility, verifiability, all of those things, all of the sort of core monetary properties that make something a good money, which Bitcoin has in spades more so than any other asset, all of those are the reasons I promote Bitcoin. So the reason it's not going to fizzle out or fade into obscurity is because it's really powerful, incredible technology that has a very real world use case, which is the ability to store, transmit, and exchange value anywhere in the world with anyone in a way that nobody in the world can print more of. Nobody can debase. Nobody can devalue. That is sort of reason number one, is it's just the core underlying value proposition and technical capabilities. So second, in case that's not convincing that, it's going to do that. Second is Bitcoin is already a $1 trillion asset. So the total value of all the Bitcoin in the world is right in the ballpark of about $1.2 trillion. So assets that are 1.2 trillion in value don't just fizzle out. That is a huge amount of value that's already stored in the Bitcoin network, $1.2 trillion. And so it's not like, I guess in the early days of 2011, 2012, 2013, 14, 15, 16, maybe, in those days you could argue that, hey, maybe it's a fad, maybe it's not a trend, maybe it's a fad, but not a trend, maybe it'll fizzle out. We're just way past that. When Bitcoin crossed, $1 a coin, it was only worth, $21 million. Then $10 a coin, it was worth $210 million, and on and on and on. We're just way past, we're not even into the billions. We're past $1 trillion in market value for Bitcoin, and there's no end in sight. So things that tend to fizzle out and sort of fade into obscurity tend to not be things that became a $1 trillion asset. So Bitcoin is really past the point, if you're worried about, it'll fade out like MySpace or it'll get this or that. Things that are of this valuable just tend to not do that. Okay, next up, as far as just reasons, so we've covered it has, technologically very good monetary properties. Secondarily, those properties solve a very real world necessary problem of moving and transmitting and storing value anywhere in the world. Third, it's scale. Bitcoin already has a huge amount of scale and network effects, and it's been battle hardened. Fourth is, if that was going to happen, it would have happened a long time before now. So Bitcoin's first price peak was at $32 a coin in 2011, and then it crashed and fizzled down to $2 over the course of a number of months. But because it was such an incredible technology, it bounced back. And even though it took a year or so, it ultimately set a new all-time high, and then it went up to $1,000. Well, it's really $1,200. Between $1,200 and 2013, then it languished for 2014, 2015. It took until 2016 to really get going again. So if Bitcoin was going to fizzle out, people were going to lose interest, it was not going to become a thing, that would have happened probably between 2013 and 2017, which was the first time that Bitcoin went on a multi-year period of time without a big sort of exciting new upsweep, of adoption and all that sort of stuff. if it was going to fizzle out, it would have done it a lot earlier in its lifespan. So again, Bitcoin's already recovered from a drop from $32 down to $2, and it could have gone to zero back then. It already recovered from a drop over multiple years from $120 down to $92. Then it recovered a drop from $19,000 down to $3,200, and then it recovered from a drop from $69,000 down to $15,500. And each of those was a multi-year process. And again, if it was going to fade into obscurity, and if it was going to go away and fade out and never really catch on or fizzle, it just would have done that way, way, way earlier in its life cycle. And the reason a lot of the certainty that I and others have about Bitcoin is because it didn't, because it's made it this long, which is a very long time, 16 years. So Bitcoin is a 16-year-old technology, 1/6, and it's been going strong for 16 years, and it has gone through, at least year or two, or bordering on 3 years, when people would say, well, it hadn't set an all-time high for 3 years now. Well, guess what? In the next year it did, and then it blew way past it into the stratosphere. So if it was going to fizzle, it would have a long time ago. Also, the only technologies that have really been transformational that have not caught on are ones that the government ultimately blocked, like nuclear power. So nuclear power is very, very, very powerful, and it's an incredible technology, generating electricity through nuclear fusion. The problem is, of course, that after the accidents of Chernobyl and I think it was 3 Mile Island, I don't know all the details, but anyway, whatever the sort of nuclear scares were, where people were worried about nuclear safety, the government came in and said, we're not doing that anymore. And the nuclear regulatory agency in the United States has not issued a new permit to build a nuclear reactor. I think it's like 50 years. It's some insane amount of time. They're just not building them. And all based on scares. And what should have happened, of course, is they said, hey, you got to prove to us that you can build this safely and that it's not going to have a meltdown and all this sort of stuff. But that's not what they did, of course. What they actually did was just say, we're just not doing nuclear anymore. But again, that was a very different case. It was coming on the heels of World War II, when nuclear weapons had blown up a bunch of people, and where nuclear power had resulted in the death of some number of people. Even though I would argue, all the other ways of generating electricity have killed more people than nuclear, and we would have been way better off and way safer if we had, gone all in on nuclear. But anyway, that's what the morons who are in charge of government and coercive power, that's the decision they made, is the reflexive reaction of let's just not do nuclear. But again, Bitcoin is not a technology that is, nuclear fusion, and it's going to result in, potentially massive a mushroom cloud. I mean, Bitcoin is just not going to result in a mushroom cloud. And if there was any danger of Bitcoin getting banned by the government of the United States, for example, that would have happened prior to January 10th of this year, when the Bitcoin exchange traded funds were approved. After January 10 of 2024, which is about 7 months ago, however long, there's really zero chance at this point that Bitcoin is banned. I mean, just zero, because now Bitcoin is owned by all of the largest investment banks on Wall Street. It's in people's 401ks. I mean, it's retirement accounts. It's in IRAs. We're just past the point. Again, maybe the probability that the government banned Bitcoin back in January was like 1/10 of 1% or 1/100th of 1% or 1/1000th of 1%. But whatever it was, it dropped to zero after January, after the Security and Exchange Commission approved the Bitcoin exchange traded funds. So to recap, technologies that have really strong, powerful underlying value, such as the automobile, electricity, the internet, the telegraph, the printing press, those type of just profound technologies that solve real world problems do not fade into obscurity. They do not fizzle out. They end up becoming dominant. And Bitcoin is certainly in that category of just radically transformational technologies that solve very real world problems. Secondly, the value proposition of the ability to transmit value has a perfect corollary, which is the internet, the ability to transmit information. And you need the ability to transmit information, and you need the ability to transmit value. That is just a very real world need. Third, Bitcoin is $1 trillion asset class. So if it was going to not catch on, fizzle out, or fade into obscurity, it would have done that. It never would have reached $1 trillion asset class status. Like, it is a major big deal now, with a lot of room to grow, but it's just a very big deal, as compared to anything that did fizzle out or faded into obscurity. And then the only technologies I can think of that were very powerful and transformational in some way, like nuclear power generation, the only reason they did not catch on more than they did was due to public safety concerns, like people actually dying from radiation and things like that. So, and Bitcoin does not have any of the characteristics that have historically led to the government of the United States, banning its use. And there's very strong, reasons why it's basically impossible to ban Bitcoin, even if the government tried. So anyway, there's a bunch more reasons. I could keep brainstorming and, keep talking. But the probability, and then we covered the fact that if it was going to fade into obscurity or fizzle out, that would have happened a long time ago, back, probably before 2017. I think 2017 was the first year. Prior to 2017, someone could make a plausible case that Bitcoin had early peaked in 2011 and then really peaked in 2013 and had just not recaptured its all-time high and just might never. So prior to 2017, you could plausibly argue that maybe, there was malaise ahead and it wasn't going to recover and, it was just sort of a flash in the pan. But from 2017 onward, there's really zero chance, in my mind, from 2017 onward that it could still fade into obscurity or become not a thing or, fizzle out and that sort of stuff. So, like I say, if I gave it more thought, I'd come up with even more reasons, but I just really don't see the fizzle out and fade into obscurity. I really don't see that as a meaningful threat on the Bitcoin front. I think, I've done entire videos of what I think all the things that bad could happen to Bitcoin, and my conclusion is I don't think any of them is even remotely likely. Otherwise, I would not have such a high percentage of my net worth in Bitcoin, which, as I've said before, is 96% of my liquid net worth. So I would not be at 96% of my liquid net worth if I had not spent thousands of hours trying to make sure that Bitcoin would not fizzle out and would not fade into obscurity, and that I was standing on a very firm foundation technologically and with adoption and politically and everything else and all the other aspects of Bitcoin. So keep the great questions coming. I love them. Keep the questions coming, and I'll keep doing videos about anything you send me. I'll take a shot at absolutely anything. So have a great evening, and go take a walk, touch grass, have fun, hang out with your family, whatever it is. It's the weather is surprisingly beautiful for an insanely hot day. It's at least getting a little cooler as the sun goes down. So enjoy your evening and have a good one. Thanks, everyone.